दीगर मसाइल जानते हैं, लेकिन अगर वो जानते नहीं हैं, वो सिर्फ कश्मीर का मसला है, इसकी तरफ तवज्जो देनी है। आज हमारी बहनें जो बहुत आगे हैं, लेकिन कश्मीर के मसले में इनको आगे नहीं लाया जा रहा है। वो आगे क्यों नहीं आती है? मसला ये नहीं है, आगे आने का मतलब ये नहीं है 2-4 फ्रंट्स जमा करके चाय पिलाएं और ख़वातीन शामिल हो गए। ख़वातीन को मुनज़्ज़म तौर पर शामिल किया जाए और ताकि हमारी उनकी आवाज़ जो है हमारी बहनों की आवाज़ बनकर आगे बढ़ सके। आखिरकार मैं गुजारिश करूँगा, आज़ाद कश्मीर एक बेस कैंप है, बेस कैंप था। मेरी गुजारिश है कि इसको बेस कैंप बनाया जाए। अगर आज फारूक हैदर साहब प्राइम मिनिस्टर आज़ाद कश्मीर के दौर में ये न हो सके, फिर कब होगा? और मुझे पूरा यकीन है अगर आज़ाद कश्मीर के वहाँ पर भाई मुत्तहिद हो गए और यहाँ पर बेस का बना, वो वक्त दूर नहीं कि हम आज़ादी की रोशनी भी देखेंगे। टाइम ख़त्म हुआ। वाखिर दावाना अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन।
Thank you so much, sir. Rightly said. Females are half of the population, and again, I am standing in the male-dominated hall, and I can feel this discrimination in this hall. So, our next guest speaker is Sayyid Abdullah Gilani. He is the representative of Sayyid Ali Gilani Sahab. Today, he is going to talk about the Kashmir human rights and interior of international community. So, please come to the podium and share your views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Honorable Raja Farooq Haider Khan Sahab, Prime Minister Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Dr. Muhammad Khan, Chairman, Kashmir Research Forum, distinguished speakers, dignitaries, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before going into the details of the handout prepared for today, let me extend my appreciation and deep gratitude to the organizers of this event and for inviting me to share my thoughts. And Altaf Wani Saab has left, I think. I appreciate his words as well because he has said the truth. I was also confused initially, and not just confused, but because we have heard today the higher truths of our miseries basically, which we haven't heard before. So I was also confused. Coming to today's topic, the Kashmir human rights and the inertia of international community. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take threads from the initial remarks by Dr. Muhammad Khan. It has been 70 years since United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, proclaiming certain basic and inalienable rights which every human being is inherently entitled to. The International Human Rights Day is observed every year across the world as both a celebration of these rights and a renewal of the pledge to uphold and protect them. But as we all know, a large chunk of humanity still remains deprived of basic rights and fundamental freedoms, and therefore the International Human Rights Day also comes as a constant reminder that the international community has not been sincere enough in its commitment to the values and principles enshrined in the Declaration, and the dream of a more just, peace and free world envisaged in the Declaration remains as distant as ever. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to draw your attention to the preamble of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It begins with the recognition that inherent dignity of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. In other words, violation of human dignity is a recipe for disaster. And we can see this disaster unfolding before our very eyes in the form of conflict zones across the world. Therefore, Kashmir is a glaring example. Around the same time as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted, Kashmir was brought on the agenda of the United Nations as a dispute between India and Pakistan. The international community, including India and Pakistan, through resolutions adopted by the Security Council, agreed and committed to resolve the issue in accordance with the will of Kashmiri people by the means of a free and impartial plebiscite. 7 decades later, while the world has gone through rapid change and tremendous progress has been made, in almost every sphere, the Kashmir issue continues to remain stuck in a time wrap. Kashmiri people are still waiting to be given a chance to exercise their internationally recognized right to self-determination, and the clouds of uncertainty continue to loom over their future. Ladies and gentlemen, India itself took the matter to the United Nations, but today remains in deep denial about the nature, history, and the context of the dispute, and uses all brutal means of repression at its disposal to crush the popular uprising in the region. Kashmir has virtually become the graveyard of human rights. The human rights violations in Kashmir have been well documented and widely reported by local and international groups and the media. But the response from the international community, with some honorable exceptions, has largely been muted. When it comes to Kashmir, the world seems to suffer from a collective amnesia and inertia, and we believe it is this global indifference, rather negligence, that is perpetuating the suffering and pain of Kashmiri people. When the perpetrators of atrocities are not made accountable for their actions, they become emboldened, and that is exactly what happened to Indian forces, and are engaged in flagrant violations of human rights and are committing these heinous crimes with absolute impunity. The recent UNHRC report on the human rights situation in Kashmir bears this out. The 49-page report is the first of its kind from the UN and should serve as both an eye-opener and wake-up call about the humanitarian crisis unfolding in Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, the real essence of this report lies in its recommendations, wherein the demand for an international investigation into human rights abuses in Kashmir and a call for respect for the Kashmiri people's right to self-determination figure prominently. One of the basic principles of conflict resolution is to identify and address the root cause. In the case of Kashmir, the root cause is the denial of the right to self-determination. This is the underlying disease of which the human rights abuses and other issues are only symptoms. And unless we make sincere efforts to treat the underlying disease, we won't be able to gain much by addressing the symptoms. I thank you all, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Sayyid Abdullah Gilani Sahab. Our next guest speaker is Professor Dr. Imtiaz Ahmed Khan. Dr. Khan is a president of Kashmir American Council, Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. He is also serving as a professor of George Washington University. Today he is going to speak on Kashmir, human without rights. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. His Excellency, Mr. Prime Minister, and distinguished guests. Well, I'm sort of going to repeat what our other speakers have said, but I will give my own perspective about that. What are human rights? and many speakers have alluded to the fact. Human rights are that when people are allowed to live in dignity, have right to property, have right to fight against the slavery, have right to education, irrespective of caste, creed, color, and gender. And people of occupied Kashmir have none of that. We have leaders like Alisha Gilani, who is 90 years old, who needs medical treatment, and he's deprived of that medical treatment, and he's restricted at his home. We have leaders like Yasin Malik, who just wants to go to have a peaceful protest, but every time he does so, he's thrown into the jail. We have Maulana Muhammad Farooq, who's the midwife and who has to perform his religious duty by addressing Friday congregation, but on many occasions he is not allowed to move out of his house. This is the question of the leaders. What about the common people? Since last 30 years, 135,000 people have been massacred, 10,000 women have been raped, and we have mass graves. And it is not what people of Kashmir is saying, it is what you listen to an Indian professor, a Hindu, Angana Chatterjee, what she is saying. And what she said, because when she was doing with Parvez Imroz, looking at these mass graves, and what she found was just tip of the iceberg, and they say thousands of people who are disappeared from Kashmir are lying in mass graves, but Indian government will not allow it. It is not a story of Jalil Andrabi, who was just kidnapped from his house by an Indian major, Avtar Singh, and his mutilated body was found on the Jhelum River. It is not about only Kunin Poshpora, where 80 women were raped in one single night, and a woman of 80 years old was not spared, and the youngest one who was 15 years old. It is not the question of Shupian, where two relatives, two women who were relative to each other were raped, and then under a false investigation the CBI is conducted, it was not a rape. And not only that, her husband was forced to leave the city because he was terrorized by the people, by the Indian army. So the atrocities continue unabated. I have an opportunity. I go to visit Kashmir every year, sometimes twice a year. I have been to Kashmir about 2 weeks ago. I was in Indian occupied Kashmir. The human rights violations have reached a terrible, monumental magnitude. And what used to happen earlier days, that when they used to take one of youth and they used to kill them. Now they don't do that. They just bomb the whole town. They just kill and what Indian government is really frustrated, because now it is an indigenous population. The people who are joined the movement are doctors, are PhDs, are scholars and everything, and they have decided that they will reach to this freedom movement to logical conclusion. And what is the problem is the silence from the international arena. Indian government knows that the international voices have not raised against this, and what we have to do, while I'm staying in America, what I have to do is to knock each and every door to see that people became aware of what the Kashmir problem is. That is an issue, which was raised by one of our speakers, is that why everybody knows about Palestine issue. When we have in mosques, in congregations, the prayers being made for people in Afghanistan, people in Palestine, people in Yemen, why not people in Kashmir? That is the challenge we are facing. That is something which we have to think about. Why Kashmir is not given the attention other international problems are given. India is not ready to listen. India will not listen. And these token things like will not work with India. India has to be put under economic pressure. India has to be put under, there has to be some severe sanction, and this is not an easy task to do. Because international community, in spite of the fact that human rights reports were released, but Indian government will not allow them to come to to visit the Indian occupied Kashmir. So what should we do? We have to knock the door. We have to make people aware. We have to have gathering, people like myself and the others. Like it was said that you have to know your enemy. The bulwark of this thing was started by Dr. Ghulam Nabi about 2 decades ago. And he was met with certain degree of success. But unfortunately, when Indian government was after him under a false trial, he was incarcerated. But these things should not discourage us. These things should not allow us that we should just sit idle. It is not the question of having the token demonstrations. on 27th of October or 15th of February, but it should be a continued process. Pakistan should be can play a big role, but Pakistan is not playing the role which it's supposed to play. There is no strategy for Kashmir. They should have a strategy for Kashmir. Last few years ago when I was visiting Pakistan, I met one of the members of the Kashmir committee, and it was unfortunate that committee had not met a single time. I would like to know that what that committee has done. There were also representatives after this Burhan Wani incident happened, this martyrdom happened. There were representatives who were sent to different countries. What happened to that? Where is that report? And what input we got from them? So unless these things happen, Kashmir issue cannot be, we cannot make progress on this issue. India is a tough enemy. India has been able to successfully label it as a sort of a fundamentalist movement. And we have to unmask the real face of India. And that can be only done by when we educate the international community. International community, even you go to ISNA or ICNA or all these, there will be a lot of talk about Yemen even, there will be a lot of talk about Palestine even, there will be a lot of talk of other issues but there is not a single mention of Kashmir. That is the brainstorming session we have to have. Why there is the OIC Foreign Ministers Committee? Why can't Pakistan use its influence in Turkey and say that issue and statement against India as far as the human rights violations in Kashmir are concerned? Unless these things happen, unless there is a severe international pressure, India is not going to yield. Because biggest success, whether we like it or not, India is having is that we have not been, Kashmir issue is not internationalized. These token demonstrations will not do much. They will not cut the ice. We have to internationalize the issue. We have to make the India pariah. We have to make India answer for the human rights violations they committed. These mass graves is not a small violation. This is the crimes for which certain rulers of the countries like Iraq or Yugoslavia had to face the gallows. Why same standards are not being applied to India? That is the question which we have to ask. So we have to think on the international level. We cannot think just on we have demonstrations in Azad Kashmir, we have demonstrations in Pakistan. No, last year we had one big meeting in Copenhagen, and in the parliament in Danish parliament. And a lot of parliamentarians, I was really surprised, they said they didn't know that these kind of atrocities are happening in Kashmir. This is the question is, where are we lacking? What we need to do, unless we have to have kind of a strategy. The current Prime Minister of Pakistan is a cricketer, and in the game of cricket, you need to have a strategy. And I hope he has a strategy for Kashmir. Even when there is a single murder in Kashmir, the Foreign Office should remain active. There should be cells in the Foreign Office on Kashmir, in each of the major countries, where all the atrocities being committed, all the committed being committed. The foreign government should be informed about them. So we have to get together. We have to put our pressure on Pakistan. We have to use the right kind of strategy so that the international community comes to know about the human rights violations which India is committing, and there should be some kind of sanctions on India because India is using Kashmir issue for its domestic elections. Because they think that any government who starts talking to Pakistan on Kashmir issue will basically lose on elections. If India is made to convince that they're supposed to lose by not solving the Kashmiri problem, they will be on the losing end, then only India can come to the negotiating table. Because right now India is saying they don't want to even talk about Kashmir. So how to bring India on the negotiating table? And that can only happen by using international pressure. So that's all I have to say, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks, Professor Dr. Imtiaz Ahmad Khan. Next speaker is Syed Faz Naqshbandi. He is convener All Party Jorid Conference, Pakistan AJK. He will speak on self-determination and draconian laws in Indian occupied Kashmir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Prime Minister of Azad Jammu Kashmir, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, my appreciations to the Policy and Research Forum headed by Dr. Mohammed Khan and his team, particularly Prime Minister of Azad Kashmir, for organizing this important event on the occasion of International Human Rights Day, the 10th December. I am honored to attend this event. My statement, ladies and gentlemen, will be in three parts. One is self-determination, the another draconian laws in IOK, and the third one is way forward, and my recommendations. I will try to be very brief. Ladies and gentlemen, the right to self-determination is one of the core principles of international law. It is the fundamental right and has been declared as important as right to life by UN General Assembly resolutions. This self-determination has led millions of people across the globe to find their destiny. Kashmiris, for last 70 years, still wait for implementation of UN resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir. Ladies and gentlemen, our resolutions, the resolutions on the Jammu and Kashmir, have been agreed upon by India and Pakistan, making these resolutions as international agreements of binding force besides being the resolutions. Normally there is no need to accept the resolution, but in our case, it has been agreed upon for the implementation. But the sad part of this, when it was pending in the UN Security Council, Indian representative as well as the Indian Prime Minister made commitments, yes, we will implement the UN resolutions. But you see the malafidis. At the same time, India was deploying its forces in all parts of the Kashmir. And once India was sure, now the military grip over Kashmir is strong enough, India started calling Kashmir as integral part, ignoring the UN resolutions, ignoring the responsibilities as a member state. Not only this, ladies and gentlemen, India, in order to confuse the world opinion, has started saying the UN resolutions are old, therefore have become ineffective. This is not true. Our UN resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir are intact and enforceable. There are three situations where a UN resolution can become ineffective. Number one situation, when there is a time framework mentioned in the UN resolutions. It is not there, therefore intact. Second situation, when the parties to the dispute enter into an agreement that we have resolved this issue, we don't need the UN resolutions, and this too with the consent of the Security Council, with the endorsement of the Security Council. It has not happened in our case. The third situation, when the United Nations passes another resolution, cancelling the old one, this too has not happened.